another edition of the Balanced CEO podcast. I'm excited today. We have Kenny Markwardt here from the great state of Idaho. So Kenny is actually from California like me. He made some drastic decision to leave, moved to northern Idaho, basically Canada if you ask me, and wanted to get free from the grind in large populations. And since then, he's opened a gym with his wife. She owns a nutrition coaching business online.
Yep.
And he's got a ton of outdoor hobbies, including murdering multiple different types of animals for food, and fishing, skiing. So I think you're right in your element up there in northern Idaho.
I fit in pretty well. Yeah, that's most people are surprised to hear my original background, but it's a drastic change from what I grew up doing for sure. So
I think the idea of, like, especially you're from Huntington Beach, like surfer town, you
Yep.
expect that kind of atmosphere to have a lot of influence, but in reality, you were like, get me to the mountains.
yeah, I mean, interestingly enough, I didn't hunt. I had no interest in hunting when we moved there. Like that wasn't a part of the plan. I'd never done it. And I thought I'd fish. I grew up ocean fishing and thought I'd start fly fishing, and I figured that would be part of it. But hunting I never thought I'd be into it. I didn't think that I could. Well, I don't know if I didn't think I could, but I thought that killing something would be tough. But when we moved up there, we were super into CrossFit, super into paleo, super into the idea of as few people touching our food as possible. And then when I figured out I could hunt my own food, that just became a natural progression for me. And so I started out, I shot a grouse. That didn't freak me out. Shot a turkey. That didn't freak me out. Shot a deer. And now it's like the thing I look forward to the most. And I would try and hunt every year or every month of the year if I possibly could.
That's amazing. And I know you've done some stuff in the hunting world too that I want to kind of touch on. That you contributed to some of the hunting magazines in terms, I know it was like a fitness, how to be more fit as a hunter, because obviously hunting is not all just sitting there and waiting.
Yeah. You
got to go to where these animals are moving, and you have to get out there. And sometimes it's really rural, really dense, and you have to carry tens of pounds with you, 30, 40, 50, 100 pounds. So.
Yeah, that's true. Especially elk hunting, which is the thing I'm into the most. I mean, it's arduous. It's really tough, and there's a lot of training involved. And so I had the opportunity to write for Traditional Bow Hunter magazine. I've been on some hunting podcasts, and I mean, I'm not an accomplished hunter by any means, but I think that my perspective is a good one, both from the fitness perspective but also from my upbringing. I do think that a lot of people have a negative connotation with hunting, and they think about it like murdering poor defenseless animals.
I said that in jest, by the way.
Yeah.
I've been begging him to send me a leg of an elk so I could smoke it for years.
Send you a bear. I think a bear might be a good smoke.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the same thing. If people, to even further that, bear hunting really freaks people out. Like they have a soft spot for bears, and I could hypothesize on why they have that.
Stuffed animals come to mind.
Yeah, totally. The anthropomorphizing, I'm going to screw that word up, but where they just kind of put a human identification to an animal and have the relationship with it that makes it uncomfortable for them to understand why you would want to kill it. And again, having the upbringing that I did, I grew up, like I said, fishing, but killing a fish and killing a four-legged mammal is a little bit different. And again, having not grown up doing it, and I can explain how and why I got there, and I didn't grow up doing that. I had nobody to teach me how, but to do it as a food source and that's our primary source of food throughout the year. I think that really colors it in a positive way for most people, which is different than most people think. They think they're driving around in a truck at night, shooting everything you can, and just picking up whatever's left over. And that's not at all the case. Yeah, right. Exactly. Right.
This is being responsibly sourced. Like, this is literally the pinnacle of responsibly sourced food.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing more satisfying to me than having 3 full freezers full of meat, and providing that for my family, and providing it for other people when they come over for dinner. Like, a lot of people they think wild game is going to be it's not going to taste good. It couldn't be more the opposite. It's delicious. It's amazing, and finding ways to prepare it and making that a part of the journey has been a cool part of the story for my wife and I. My wife's fantastic in the kitchen, and so to be able to go out and bring food home and her to prepare it has just been so cool.
I'm sure it's been a fun challenge for her to learn different ways to cook stuff. So I know from my own experiences, barbecuing, doing stuff with game meat, everything requires a slightly different seasoning palette because it has a different kind of, I call it a twang, like it has just a different punch.
Yeah.
And you have to kind of find a way to absorb that with seasoning. And, the normal seasoning that you might use on a beef, it's definitely not going to cut it on an elk, and it's 100% doesn't cut it on like a lamb. So
yeah, for sure. I mean, animals taste like what they eat. And so even an elk in Montana, central Montana is going to taste different than an elk in North Idaho. And then back to the bear thing, which everybody always wants to talk about. Bears are going to taste like what they eat.
Right.
And so, there are bears that probably don't taste as good because they're eating rotten fish or spawned out salmon or whatever. But the bears that we get around us are pretty darn good. And so we eat bears. That, again, freaks people out.
I watched that show on Netflix. Every season that's come out, Steven, I can't remember.
Meat Eater,
Meat Eater. And I really enjoyed like a lot of what he teaches and how he cooks. So I've learned some stuff on how to cook with that too.
Yeah.
But one thing that really caught me that you brought up was like they would go hunting in certain times of the year for bear because the bears were eating berries, and it was like the best tasting berry you could ever get.
Yep.
Because at that time they were just eating nothing but berries, so it was like a really kind of sweet meat.
Yeah, exactly.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
It's very cool that he wasn't just making that up.
No. No, he's a good gateway drug for people to understand hunting from that perspective, because he would do a good job of his show, despite the fact that he's got a lot of money behind it. They're sending him out in the field, and he doesn't always kill something. And like that paints a picture, very accurate picture of what actually transpires on a hunt. And then he spends the latter part of the show preparing the food from whatever he harvests. And that helped me bridge that gap from non-hunter to hunter and chef in what we're bringing home. So it's fun.
I love it, man. So let's talk more about like how you have all this time to hunt and chop down trees and do all this. So you have built a pretty incredible balance in your life with the gym and with your wife's nutrition company, and you're also a father, and I think you do jiu-jitsu too, right on top of all this.
I used to. I spent 10 or 12 years doing jiu-jitsu. I have not in a couple of years though. So.
Okay.
Yeah. No.
But I mean, regardless, you've got a ton of things going on.
Yeah.
You're a mentor for Two Brain Business.
Yeah.
So you've got clients all over the world. You've got your local clients at your gym. You've got your wife's company. And then you've got these hobbies that clearly take days. This isn't something you go out and do for an hour, for exercise. Like you're gone for days at a time. How do you balance that? How do you find the time? What are some of the ways you systemize that to make it available just on a basic level for people that maybe are stuck and going, I want to do things like that more often, but I'm afraid?
Yeah, sure. And to put it in context, I think I probably hunted 36 days last year. Maybe, I don't know. That's just pulling it out of my, but I would imagine that's pretty close. We spent 2 weeks in Mexico. We ski. We do all the things you mentioned. And so it is a lot. But the thing that I've prioritized from the very beginning was just blocking time off, which sounds so basic and so, surface level, but I'm the king of blocking my calendar. Like, this is what I'm doing, and I protect that time like it's, gold. So if somebody says, hey, can you do this on this day? And I see my calendar, I've got hunting scheduled. Like, I just shot out. And so archery elk is in September. And so I penciled out like afternoons, mornings, Fridays, whatever days I could. Like, that is blocked, and I do not do anything on those days because it's super important to me. And it allows me to be a better father, allows me to be a better business owner, a better husband. And by being pretty transparent about that to everybody, they get it. Like, they understand that I'm better when I come back if I'm not annoyed because I'm not able to do the things that I want to do.
That's a great point, and that's something that's actually unique that has not been mentioned. But I think I'm in the same boat. I think for a lot of us, it's these hobbies. People look at hobbies and they're like, "Oh, it's a hobby. Like it's not that big of a deal." But in reality, when you're time blocking and you're jumping from focus to focus to focus to focus, you have to have something that just like flushes all that out.
Yeah.
That like, I call it vomiting. I call it mind vomit. Like you got to mind vomit out all these thoughts and like,
yeah,
you have to mind vomit out all these emotions you've packed in from like all the stressful things that happened that you weren't, that just came out of left field. And everybody has to have those hobbies that allow you, and that only works if you've created the time.
Yeah.
And you've created the systems in your business to be able to step away and go, turn to your staff and go, I'm going to go do this thing. And they know that when you're saying you're going to go do that thing, it's time to release. It's going to be much better after.
Yeah. And there's all the one of the biggest parts of that though is loving what you do. Like I sincerely still love my gym. I love hunting, obviously. I love all these other things, but when I transition from one to the next, I'm really looking forward to it. So, and I think that the looking forward to all of them allows me the bandwidth and the excitement to do all of it as hard as I possibly can. So when I come back from a hunting trip, or even when I shot that bull last Thursday, and I was excited to go back to work. Like I was like, okay, cool. I got my time. I got to do the thing. I was successful. That's amazing. And now I'm super excited to go back to work. And it's not just like a grind to like, I don't dread Mondays. I think that's a great way to look at life. If you don't dread your Mondays, I think you're in a pretty good spot.
Yeah. Don't dread Mondays and don't look forward to Fridays.
Yeah, exactly.
I think those two things are like the biggest signs that you have a good balance is, I don't know. Half the time I don't know it's the weekend.
Yeah.
There's a lot of days where I'm like, oh, it's Tuesday. And they're like, no, it's Thursday. And I'm like, could have fooled me.
Yeah, exactly.
The only day I know for a fact is Mondays because I have all my meetings I get all my management meetings. I give them all the time they need. I help them set up their week.
Yeah.
And aside from Mondays, like I couldn't tell one day or the other because it's pretty much repetitive time blocking. And that's let's talk about that. So for a lot of people, I think time blocking is a foreign concept.
Yeah.
And because they're like, well, shit just gets thrown at me all the time. And I think we need to talk about the basics of time blocking. How do you get to time blocking? And it's not just, I'm going to block my calendar and like prioritize this is what I'm doing. Like you have to understand what's most important.
Yeah.
You've worked through that a few times. So talk a little bit about how you came up with priorities that were going to time block and stuff that was just going to get thrown into like a miscellaneous time at the end of the day.
I don't think there's anything that gets thrown into miscellaneous time in the day, to be quite honest.
So that's just me. All right.
Well, that's not, I guess none of my priorities do, but I do leave time for that miscellaneous stuff that is inevitably going to happen. Like, it's not like somebody, can I borrow your minute? Like, no, I'm going to kick it out 2 weeks because that's all I have. So I think for whatever reason, when I started the gym, because of the way that our blocks are set up, like we have a morning block and an afternoon block, like that actually was accidentally conducive to this idea where I could when I first started hunting, I was actually quite involved in the gym. And so I would have to say, okay, well, Tuesdays and Thursdays, I don't coach. So that's Tuesday and Thursday afternoons, I don't coach. So that's my afternoon. I can go out those evenings and I'm not doing anything at the gym. I'm gone. Like I'm disappearing. And that just kind of snowballed into the idea of, okay, well, cool. Now I got Fridays off because I wanted those off. So I got those covered. Now my Fridays are blocked and I can go do those. And again, I think it was probably it was part accidental, part intentional, but that whole plan and being in the entrepreneurial setup, it did plant that seed for me and allow me the thing to say, okay, well, if I get this part covered, I can do these other things, but I'm going to fill it with something else important and not just sit around on my ass because it's easy to do that too.
So when someone is new to prioritizing time blocking, is there any specific things you'd recommend they focus on, like that they need to prioritize over other? Because I think as entrepreneurs, we have a tendency to want to either do the things that we are best at, even if it's not the thing that makes the biggest impact. So would you prioritize impact? Would you prioritize things that you're best at, or kind of a combination? How would you walk through that something with a mentee?
With a mentee, so I have my high value roles that I believe that I have to do. And I look at those are on a weekly, I have a list of weekly things that I have to do as a CEO of my business. And I do block those out. Like, this is my time to do, I have 6 things. And those are blocked out in my calendar.
Are those essentially non-negotiable? Like, these things will get done every single week?
Yeah.
Regardless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'm so emphatic on that because I don't have a boss. And I think that that's a hard thing for a lot of people in entrepreneurialism. They're used to answering to somebody. They're used to somebody, even in school, like, hey, this is due this time. But yeah, my staff might complain if I don't have something done, but they're probably not. Like, they're probably going to let it slide. So it's up to me. So the self-discipline of saying, this is my job, and I would fire myself or discipline myself if I didn't do this. If I was an employee of myself, like, I would be furious if I wasn't doing these things. And so I have to do them as though I were a staff member. And so they get penciled in. They're not penciled in, they're in pen on a weekly basis that I have to do them, or I'm failing as an entrepreneur, which then gives me the freedom to know that I can disappear and go hunt or go ski or go to Mexico. I can do all those things
without any ounce of guilt.
Yeah, no guilt, and nobody's bothered. Nobody bothers me, but nobody's like, hey, stupid, like, what are you doing? When I hunt, I usually don't work, but if we go to Mexico, which we have done every winter for the last 7 or 8 years, like, they know that I'm working, and because that's how my brain tends to, I can't just go sit on the beach somewhere. They know I'm still doing the thing, and it's not like, oh, he's off gallivanting around, screwing around in Mexico. They know that I'm being productive, and I'm using that time wisely to help further their careers, my career, and the gym as a whole. I'm there.
I agree. I think my staff, now that my key staff has all been to the summit at least once, most of them twice. They understand now the value of the people I'm around when I go to these things. They understand the value of the information I'm going to bring back to help push the gym forward. In fact, shout out to my key staff. My main management team is the reason I renewed for a 3rd year Tinker. I was kind of on the fence only because of the travel.
Sure.
And they were like, we'd really appreciate if you keep going back because the information you bring back is so valuable.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I think it's really important that your staff kind of buys into the reason you go do things. Like, they love when I'm like, I'm going to take a day off. They're like, that's amazing because you always come back in a better mood.
Yes. Yeah, for sure. And it's the same thing we talked a little bit about family. Like, Jen, my wife, knows I'm better if I get to go disappear a couple days a week during hunting season, or if I get to go, spend some time myself just being quiet somewhere and thinking.
Yeah.
And I think that gets lost a lot of the time, where people don't realize how much better they can think about things on a grander scale when they're not neck deep in it every day. Because when you're in it, it's hard to think about the bigger stuff. You're just fighting fires or getting pulled in every direction. But when you can go and disappear and look at things from that 10,000 foot view, I think that your overall planning and execution on things gets so much better.
I agree. I think my thing is, it's getting out there. The gym has become that since I got into Tinker and realized health was so important.
Yeah. The
gym has become a place like that for me. And I think going at least a couple times a year, traveling somewhere else and going to see my friends play or see a great concert. I think my wife has realized, like, that's kind of my thing, right? Like, one of my favorite bands, The Whole World Rains, has a song that talks about when I got the music, I got a place to go.
Yeah.
And I think she's realized, like, that's a huge refill for me.
And in reciprocity, the same thing is extended to everybody in my circle, in that when me hunting is a burden on the family. Like, yeah, it's great, I get to bring home all this free meat, which is a whole other conversation. But the point is that when I do plan my hunting season, I ask Jen, what do you need for me to be able to go and do this? In other words, what's your trip? When are you going to go disappear? Right. What's your bandwidth thing that I can take off of your plate so that you can be excited about me going, knowing that your thing is going to or has already happened. And the same thing for my staff. Like we have we spend a bit of time in Mexico every year, but the conversations that we have with our staff is like, what do you want to do? Like, the sky's the limit. I had a staff member, I don't know that I recommend this, but he left for 3 months. He went to Colombia.
Oh, I remember that was stress.
It was a little bit of stress, yeah. But the point was like, dude, like, this isn't about me. Or maybe it is about me, but it's also about you.
Right.
And I want to live my best life. Yeah, but you should live yours too. And I want to help you do that.
Yeah. I want to know that my business impacts people in a way that allows them to live the life they always wanted.
Yeah.
I don't ever want it to feel like your job is a restriction.
Right.
From growth.
Right.
And sometimes that means I have to support them leaving and going somewhere else
Yep.
because they have a passion outside the industry.
Yeah.
But I don't ever want them to feel like they have to go look for another job in the industry because it's not fulfilling enough, or there's a glass ceiling holding them back from growth.
Yes.
And that's something I'm really, really passionate and energetic about making sure.
For sure. I think the roles that we play often become an employee-employer, which is that's fine, but at the end of the day, it's a bit of again, the reciprocity. That's the word I used a second ago, but that's the best way to sum it up.
I think it's the perfect word for it.
Yeah, I want you to. I sincerely want the best for you. It's not about me doing it is about me doing the best thing I can, but it's also about you doing the same thing. And
Right.
I want to help you do that as best as I possibly can.
I think the way I've always described it is we all got to eat.
Yeah.
And when it's done correctly, there's always plenty to go around.
Yeah, exactly. And that comes circling back. The CEO jobs that I have to do are my responsibility to them to uphold my end of the bargain,
Right.
you know? And I have to be transparent. Like, I didn't do a great job of that for a period of time because I didn't really have to. And that wasn't fair. And I got pushback and learned some lessons from that. So
I had my rundown.
Yeah.
2018, after a really shitty attempt at a price increase, and I kind of just gave up mentally, physically,
Yeah.
everything. And my staff really carried the torch for like a solid year and a half. And
Yeah.
I tell people, anyone that will listen, the pandemic changed my life because the pandemic made me realize I wasn't ready to give it all up yet.
sure. Yeah.
And I went hard the other way to make sure that and I also saw how bad my staff was struggling to survive.
Yeah.
And I realized that was my fault.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was like, never again.
Right.
So it's been the last 4 years of basically a comeuppance of like getting everything where it is, getting the systems, creating full-time roles, which at that time in our area in Tracy, California, was non-existent in the fitness industry.
Yeah.
So I wanted to make sure those opportunities were available.
Yeah. I think that was a cool time. I think that really forged the steel for those of us who really wanted to do this, and those that didn't, they kind of gave up. That was a trying period, it was
You got an easy
terrible.
out.
Yeah, exactly. We're done. Screw this.
Yeah.
But to go back in and fight, I think it was not fun.
I mean, I'm not going to lie. I wrote the closing email 5 times and deleted it every time.
Yeah, right.
Because I realized I'm not a quitter. I'm not doing this. Too many people are depending on me, and I'm way too stubborn. I'm the most stubborn. You will not outlast me. If I decide I'm going to dig my heels in, I'll die before those heels come off the ground.
Yeah, totally. Right. And a lot of this is there's going to be ups and downs, but the strong will survive and hold on. And sometimes it's just a game of outlasting. So.
Yeah, and that's what I've really realized. And I want to talk a little more about Mexico. So I know this is something you guys have become passionate about. It's longer trips, couple weeks. I think you've gone even over a month, right?
Yep.
And you've started learning Spanish.
I have.
Are you doing the normal tourist areas, or you're going more like fishing spots and more non-tourist Mexico, where it more requires the knowledge and the culture? And tell me more about that. How did that come about? How did a guy from California move to Idaho and then suddenly decide Mexico is his spot? This is really all ends of the spectrum.
I'm a little frenetic. So winters in North Idaho are tough.
I can imagine.
Yeah, it's gray. it's dark. And so it originally came about because at the end of the winter, like towards February, you just want to stab someone and see some color. Like that's it. It's just great. And so we decide, my wife she loves to plan travel, and she found a spot in Cabo, and we zipped down there for 5 days and really enjoyed it. And it just kind of bridged from there. But I do like to blend in. I mean, I don't blend. If you're listening to this, you can't see my skin color, but I'm about as pale as they get. So I don't blend in, but I want to feel like I'm experiencing something real. I cannot stand tourist Mexico. I cannot stand feeling like I'm getting a show put on for me. Like I want to live it in the closest way that I possibly can, and just speak the language, which I'm still not very good at, but I can survive. Yeah, for sure.
They appreciate it when you have it, when it shows that you're learning,
right?
And you put an attempt in, because they can tell the difference between someone that's like, they know, like me. I knew Spanish in high school really, really well, and then I lost it. So like if I'm around it enough, it starts coming back, and they can tell that I'm making a real attempt.
Exactly.
Versus someone that like I always call it an arrogant American.
Yes.
Because we're the worst at learning other languages or respecting cultures.
Yeah.
And that like knows hola and can't even like say that correctly.
Yeah.
And it's like you could tell they're not even trying.
If that, yeah.
They're pissed off that not everyone knows English.
Yeah, exactly. They get out of down in Cabo and main Cabo, you will see white suburban after white suburban of white tourists who are just like there to let's just get the sun, I guess. I'm not sure what they're actually doing.
Drink a margarita, and say they got culture.
Right, exactly. And I mean, I guess good for them. It's a little disappointing, but that drives me crazy.
I don't think it's any different than the people that they call mainlanders. We go to Hawaii every year for Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
And mainlanders come over and treat people like shit.
Right.
And, don't respect the land. They go on sacred land and stomp around and do stuff they know they're not physically capable of doing, and then get themselves hurt and have to be evacuated out of places all the time.
Yeah.
And it's like, I just really respect the fact that you take the time to learn. My wife's family's all from Portugal. We went to the Azores this summer for the very first time, and I attempted to learn as much as I could.
Cool.
Picked her family's brains on words as much as I could. I really made it a passion thing that I want to go back next year, but with a much larger vocabulary, and really show that I care and like that it matters.
Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. It's just showing that you care, that you're interested. I mean, in the roles being reversed, if somebody comes to North Idaho and they don't speak English, but they're interested, like they're trying, and they're like, that's awesome. I mean, no judgment if they don't, but at the same time, I'm very happy to cater to them and show them and hang out with them and just show them the stuff that I just hate feeling like a tourist anywhere I go.
I do too.
I want to feel like I'm doing the thing.
I feel like I'm a burden when I'm a tourist.
Yeah, right.
Because these small towns, man, they're happening in the perfect location, but they weren't built for that. Their infrastructure wasn't built for that.
No.
And I mean, my worst problem in Portugal was getting made fun of because everything's Spanish. Like, Spanish inflection. So they'd make fun of me and be like, this fucking Spanish guy is an idiot. And I'd be like, at least I'm trying.
Yeah, but you're trying. That's great.
Yeah. And I can understand what you're saying. So busted.
Yeah. But man, we've had the best food, the best experiences way off the beaten path. Like we just got plain lost. And had some of the best food ever, and met some of the nicest people who were just like they got it. Like we were trying, and we weren't scared.
That's
locked their car, and just sat there and waited to get rescued by the consulate or whatever. Like we were just hanging.
That's so amazing, man. I love it. I'm glad like you found that balance, and I hope this really encourages other people to start striving for that, because there are so many memories and experiences and things that you can do while still running a successful business. And I think giving other people great opportunities to live an autonomous life that maybe don't have that entrepreneurial spirit, but they want to be a leader, and you can give them that opportunity. And at the same time, they give you the opportunity to go travel like that. Spend a month in Portugal or Mexico, or we do 10 days in Hawaii every year on top of other vacations. And My wife's give is Disneyland. So I make sure with all the travel I do, we go to Disneyland as much as she wants.
Yeah.
You know, we spent an entire date night there 2 weeks ago.
Nice.
So it's like, that's my give to her, right?
Yeah.
You want to go to Disneyland? Awesome, book it.
Cool. Great.
No questions asked.
That's awesome. I think
Figure it out.
That's such a missing piece for a lot of people. It's just very one-sided. Somebody ends up resentful, and then it eventually explodes.
But if we didn't have that balance, right, and we didn't have the right people in place, we couldn't do any of it. And then it's like no one's living a happy life because no one's got outlets, no one's got a place to go.
Yeah.
And then your staff isn't happy because they don't feel any like pride of ownership or any responsibility. So it's a very plain job for them.
Yeah. My biggest goal in life, I think, is to live a life, work a job that I don't want to retire from, but that I can eventually, if I so choose to. And I think that puts, and I want that for my staff as well. And I think that perspective really provides that balance of like lifestyle versus wealth versus whatever, because there's so many people who work their asses off to be able to someday live the lifestyle that they can have. And this is a story we probably don't have time to get into, but my dad died at 44 trying to do that. He got a brain tumor, but he was trying to retire at 55, and then he was going to live the life he wanted to live.
Right.
And I saw that at a young age, realizing that that's not a good path, because you're not promising anything. So for me, part of the whole move and starting the gym was to say, you know what? I want to live a life that I want to live and be able to hunt, be able to have the time to do these other things, to do something I'm passionate about, because I don't know if I'm promised tomorrow, but I want to run a successful business so that someday I can move on if I want to. And I want to do the same thing for my staff. And they may be in a little bit of a different position, both lifestyle and wealth-wise, but there's a trade-off to that. They have less risk on the table,
right,
et cetera. But
slightly less responsibility if all the chips fall, they're not the ones getting left empty-handed.
Right, but that's what I want to create for them, is something that like they could envision doing forever.
Yeah. And
that may be a grandiose perspective, but I want to bring that to the table. I still want them to make enough money that they can someday decide, hey, this isn't something I want to do anymore, and they can walk away. That's great.
I support that because I'm in the same boat. I think you should. I'm going to cut it right there because I think your final thought was really thought-provoking for everyone. And I will bring this back to what I've said multiple times on this podcast, which is the job or your company should work for you, not the other way around.
Yeah.
And you can make that possible for your staff too. And if you really focus on that, you will be amazed at the effort your staff will bring, at the passion they'll have when they're finally given some autonomy. And you'll be amazed at the amount of opportunities that will suddenly open for you.
Yeah.
Suddenly everybody's like, yeah, go do your thing. We got this. Like, we enjoy being given this responsibility if you have the right people in place. So I really hope you guys like soak that in. This is really amazing, and I appreciate you being here. And just again, remember, his version of balance, Kenny's version of balance versus my version versus anybody else. Everyone has their own thing. Take what you can from this, leave what you can't, and as always, keep digging.